Welcome back to 5 Friday Feedback. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had an opportunity to go back and listen to Monday's episode, where we discussed how to pay less taxes in 2025 legally, and also how to keep more of that money for you today and in the future. Today, we're
Yes.
going to be recouping what we talked about then. We'll also be talking about our viewer mailbag and, of course, win of the week. But Dominic, how did you feel we did on Monday's podcast at explaining something in finance that is extremely complex, even beyond the point that it needs to be, even for professionals?
It's a difficult conversation, right? And it's a tough one to explain, but hopefully you as the viewers can kind of wrap your head around most of it. What we did with last week's episode on Monday, there's 3 different types of fruit on the tree. Knowledge fruit, we'll say, in Monday's episode, right? We get the low-hanging fruit. Maybe you guys can figure out which ones those were. Was it the HSA stuff? We got the middle hanging fruit. Was it some of the tax benefits versus Roth and traditional? And then the high hanging fruits, right? The stuff that, if you're washing your dishes and you're just listening to the podcast, you might have missed, right? Because they're a little bit more harder to consume, right? But a lot of great information in there for all types of listeners at all different levels of the tax code. But yes, I'm excited. Keyword legally. We are only teaching legal ways because that's the only ways you need to know. If it's illegal, it's bad. Remember that. But yeah, I'm excited to get into today's episode. We're going to be recapping a little bit of Monday. We got a viewer mailbag. It's a good one. It's a good one. It's a good triumphant story, I guess you could say, and some good wins of the week. So I'm excited for a Friday episode, and let's get right into it.
Yeah. Dom, I know you had a question you wanted to ask me based off some experience you had recently.
I will ask that later on in the episode when I remember it, but I will ask you that in a little bit. Okay. That's cool with you.
Yeah, of course. So I think the biggest thing that I want to talk about when it comes to Monday's episode was understanding that we have a progressive income tax system. Because I think too many people, they get confused about marginal, effective, progressive, like what do all these things mean? So what they end up defaulting to is whatever tax bracket I hit, that means that all of my taxes or all of my money is going to get taxed that same amount. And that's not the way it works. That's not the way it's really ever worked. And whoever tells you that is just plain wrong. But most people don't know what they're talking about when it comes to finance, especially the guy who's screaming every time they open up their tax bill and start yelling about, oh, I made too much money this year. That's why I owe more taxes. So it's difficult. And that's the reason that we talk about these marginal tax brackets, because I think most people, when they give their CPA or when they go to TurboTax and they put in all their information and everything works and it does beep, beep, boop, bop, and it does a little green bar that goes across. And then eventually it says like, boom, we're done. All right. Federal taxes, you owe this much, or we owe you this much. State taxes, you owe this much, or we owe you this much. And then what does everyone want? They want that little green bar to go all the way across. And then they want it to say, great job. You're going to be getting a $10,000 refund. And everyone goes, yes, I won. I beat Uncle Sam. They didn't even see it coming. I am like the goat of not paying taxes.
Yep.
And that, unfortunately, is not what that means. What that typically means, though, is that you paid Uncle Sam a 0 interest loan for a year. Whenever you get that $10,000 back, that means that you could have had that $10,000 the entire year when you were struggling in other things. You could have used that to go on a trip. You could have used that to pay for your lifestyle. But what do? We get that $10,000. That is our money. And then due to the way that we just use our mindset and our mental accounting, we go, okay, like this is just free money. Like I can do anything I want with it. It comes from the government, without realizing that was your income that you worked hard to produce. And it's crazy to me that majority of this has nothing to do with the math. Majority of it has to do with the mindset. I've met people who are like, okay, at my job, I work and I make $40,000 a year and it's just not enough to cover my lifestyle. It's like, okay, then, so what can we do? Well, I'm going to go get a side hustle. They get a side hustle. Like, all right, making more money now. But my side hustle money, like I do that as a side hustle. So I'm going to use that for fun stuff. It's like, my guy, like it's the same money. It's the same tool, but you're mentally accounting it some other place. And now you're digging yourself into this deeper hole because you've mentally put that this money is different than that money. Where in truth, it's all the same money. Just the way that you earn it is different. But the tool is still the same thing.
Yeah. You know, it's like when you win the money versus when you work for it. The money that you win, it doesn't you just blow it. You blow it because it's not worth anything to you. But if you went out and dug a ditch for 6 hours and you got paid $100, well, I'm not going to blow that on, something useless. There's this funny joke I heard recently on taxes, and it was, I told my CPA I wanted creative deductions, and he said, how creative? Picasso or prison? And that's what we're trying to avoid, right? We don't want prison time. We don't even want the IRS to ever call us. Don't call us, don't text us, I don't want to talk to you, right? I just want to.
That's an important point, right? Like if you go on YouTube today, if you go on to most social media sites, they will tell you all these different tax loopholes you can use. And they all sound well and good until you end up in a prison cell. And that's what majority of them are. They're truth disguised as something else. Because in truth, they are right to a certain extent. Like, oh, well, what I do is I take my kids, I put them on payroll, and then I deduct the taxes. It's like, you can do that to an extent. Or like, oh, I want to open this account. Well, I want to open a traditional IRA for my baby. Like that's another big one. It's like, okay, how is your baby going to have earned income to be able to contribute to that? And they're like, well, I mean, I was going to put it in there, and like this other guy's doing it and it's worked out well for him. It's like, that sounds well and good, but do you think that the IRS isn't going to catch that little Jimmy has had an IRA where he's contributing $10,000 or $7,000 to a year since the age of 0? He's got a long time for them to catch that and realize it, and then they can retroactive at any point, and then they're going to punish you and him. It's all well and good until you end up in jail. And that's where the simple things that we can do here about teaching you how to legally deduct your taxes, that works no matter what. Where the other thing, yeah, it works for a while until it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, it's going to cost you a lot more money than you saved. Ask Wesley Snipes. He was a huge paid actor, made a bunch of money, tried to avoid his taxes. And what ended up happening to him? He went to jail for like years. How much money did that cost him? You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be that story. It doesn't matter how good your story is of how much you save on taxes right now, because most people don't even understand the difference between a deduction and a credit. So they go through their whole life trying to fight for more deductions rather than looking at like, there's all these credits I can use. There's all this stuff. And we're not going to talk about that today because that's a different discussion. That's something to have with a CPA, not with a guy on a podcast. But I want you guys to understand these things and to see the way a bit more broadly than just myopically focused on, did I quote unquote make money this year or do I owe money this year? Because if you get money back, that means that you did not give enough throughout the year when you were giving your deductions. If you owe something, that means that you didn't give enough. And if you're getting something back, it means you gave too much. It's hard, but the goal should be somewhere around getting back like $100. Getting back $0 is like the goal, but good freaking luck.
Yeah. So
just try your best with a margin of error, but getting back $10,000 is not good. And giving $10,000 is not good either.
It's even worse.
Well, I mean, it could be better if you use that money strategically. If that money was invested for you, if you're using it to grow and you're like, hey, I know I'm going to owe this, but I need this money now for my business or for whatever to make me more money, and I'll pay the penalty and I'll pay everything. That's fine. Shoot, I do that with my business. That's okay. These are advanced strategies that you need to learn how to do, but that doesn't mean that you walk in here to this new gym you've never been to and just be like, oh, don't worry, I just watched Chris, bench all that. I'm going to do it too, even though you've never done that before. You need to build yourself up. You need that aggregation of marginal gains to get 1% better until you're ready to step into the domain. Don't walk into the Coliseum if you don't know what's inside the Coliseum.
Exactly. Because we don't want little Jimmy spending his 5th birthday in a federal penitentiary. Not ideal. Not ideal. Not ideal at all. Yeah, a lot of great gems in Monday's episode. Let's keep talking about them. So we already talked about the progressive tax system. If you don't know what that means, I feel like we just went over that. But it's basically like we just talked about. Speed run, 30 seconds, right? It's like a bucket with a hole in it. Once And, once you make up to this much, right, then it goes to the next one, then it goes to the next one, then it goes to the next one, right? Just because you make a lot of money doesn't mean you're taxed at that rate all the time. It's progressive, builds up, right? What other gems do we hit on Monday's episode that you want to delineate to the people?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we talked about on Monday's episode was ways to legally reduce your taxes.
Yes.
And we have to know that the government already gives us standard deductions. Because I know when people say like, oh, now I have to, I used to itemize and get way more. Like itemization was a lot of work. You had to sit there and prove that like, hey, I had this and this and this and this and this and this. Nowadays, you just get to say, hey, I have $15,000 like deducted. So you don't have to keep all those receipts. If you want to try to keep the receipts and you think it's going to be more than $15,000, then go for it. But is the amount of effort that you're putting in for the amount of savings really worth it? And that's where I see so many people get tripped up. They'll put in so much time, so much effort, so much stress, manpower. They'll pay their accountant tens of thousands of dollars to save themselves hundreds of dollars in taxes. Or if you just look at you really look at the delta there, you're like, you're just being a fool here. There's the amount of time, effort, and like money and stress that people put into that. If you just put that into your job or into loving your kids or into spending time with your spouse, you would get such a better return on investment than trying to pay less in taxes. I 1000% get that I don't want to just give more money than is needed. And there is a point to which you are losing, there's diminishing returns. So you need to understand that. And there are ways to reduce your taxes and save money for your retirement. And we talked about traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks, workplace plans. We talked about Roth accounts. We even talked about HSAs. We even kind of highlighted that there are ways in case you are past the phase outs that you can contribute to accounts like a backdoor Roth, a mega backdoor Roth. There are a bunch of different options that we didn't get into on Monday's podcast that we can discuss in future episodes. But the only thing when we talk about these is these are advanced financial independence strategies, advanced finance strategies that I don't really just want to say, hey, do this, because if you mess it up, you mess it up hard. So that's where you really need a professional to help you walk through these things. And Dominic, you asked me on Monday, like, who do I go to find? And at that point, that's where you need a team. You need a CPA. You need a fee only or a fee based financial planner. You need a CFP. You need all these things behind you to be able to help you. Don't just go trying to do stuff because Uncle Jim did it and he hasn't gone to jail yet.
Yeah. Because we all have an uncle that's very sketchy. I don't know what it is with uncles. There's always one, or a cousin or something. Yeah. The judge isn't going to care that, unless he's a bigger fish than you and you just sell out Uncle Jim, maybe that's a play. Wouldn't recommend, right? Let's just focus on making more money and being smart with the money we do make to optimize for taxes. But you can only save so much, but you can always earn more, right? So let's optimize for life and not just for taxes. That makes sense.
1000% agree. Other than that, we just talked a little bit about like different phase outs. We talked about some of the exceptions and the considerations. And, I would really recommend going back and listening to Monday's episode to understand that. I think the biggest thing that people would get from Monday's episode is, first off, understanding that we have a progressive tax system and that your marginal and your effective tax rate are two completely different things. And I think the other thing that we really talked about that I think is really important is we really went into all the different account types and we described them in plain English. So if you are like, I don't know what this 457 is that I have at work, or I don't know the difference between a Roth and a traditional, and someone keeps on mentioning this other, like a brokerage account, like all this stuff, go back and listen to Monday's episode, learn that stuff. So when you hear it, you can have an understanding. And maybe you'll come to the realization that when people talk about it as if they know what they're talking about, they don't know what they're talking about either. Because too many of us go through life espousing stuff like we are the smartest person in the world without actually going to the arena and actually doing it. And that includes Dominic and myself. We are not perfect. I'm a professional. I've been doing this for a decade now, and you can trust that what I'm saying is vetted and it's good information, but we are going to make mistakes too. So you need to be your own best advocate. You need to go and try to seek out this information too. Don't just blindly trust people and listen to other people. We're going to give you the best information that we possibly can, and I guarantee that we are going to mess up. And know that if we do, we will try to correct it here on 5 Friday Feedback as soon as we possibly can.
And that's one of those things, it's interesting. I was talking with a guy that I respect, right? And he was showing me a way to do something. And I didn't believe it. And when I did my double research, I'm like, I think I'm going to stick to doing it my way, right? Just because someone has your respect, someone has social proof, work proof, right? Anybody can be wrong. It's always important to educate yourself on the pure fundamentals of anything you're learning, right? Get back to the first principles of it all. So that's just not just a finance thing, but just for life, right? Understand whether you're making a recipe, whether you're making, 100, whether you're starting a business, always work from first principles, right? And try to understand it at the most basic level first.
Yeah. I think a lot of like Jocko Willink and like being a good leader, right? And maybe you're listening to this and you're like, well, I'm not a leader. Like I don't like you are a leader. You're a leader maybe in your household. You're a leader to your animals. Most importantly, you're a leader. You're a leader to yourself.
Yeah.
You just are. And if I'm the leader, if I'm the manager, that doesn't mean that I know how to do the marketing as good as anyone else, that I know how to do the accounting as good as anyone else, that I know how to be the best salesperson, that I know how to do, I don't know, whatever else, the cleaning just as good as everyone else. But it does mean that I can do a little bit of everything. I at least understand the way broadly to be able to know when someone's BSing me, be able to understand what's going on. Because too often it's kind of like you go to the mechanic, right? And the mechanic starts talking about, oh, the blinker fluid's really low. That's going to be another $100,000. You want me to replace that air filter? That's a really hard job to replace an air filter. It's not like it's 2 tabs and I have to pull it out and put another one in. That's going to be another $1,000. Then if you don't know what you're doing, you go like, okay, well, I mean, he says that's what it costs. And then you go watch a YouTube video and you're like, dude, the air filter is 2 little tabs that you just pop up and you take it out and put it in. And blinker fluid isn't even a real thing. But people go through their whole life just getting bamboozled because they don't want to take the time to ask another question, to seek out knowledge for themselves, to seek disconfirming evidence. And I think that's the big thing when it talks about these account types, because there's too many people that are those professional finance bros that have channels just like ours. They're probably linked to just like us, who will say, oh no, this is the only way to do it. You can only do traditional. You can only do Roth. If you do a brokerage account, you're stupid. These are a bunch of different tools. And all of these tools work well in other places. If I'm trying to cut wood and someone gives me a pencil, I'm not going to be very happy. But if I'm trying to cut wood and someone gives me a saw, that's wonderful. But if I'm trying to make a crib and I'm trying to do something simple and they just give me a saw, like trying to screw in a light bulb and someone gives me a saw, those two things don't work. Those are just different tools for different places. And you need to know, when should I apply this tool to this situation in this life where I am right?
It's all about needing the right tool for the job at the right moment. And maybe a Roth IRA isn't for you at this moment. Your traditional isn't for you at this right moment. You kind of have to be in the right place at the right time. But if you don't have the knowledge to know where you need to be, well, then you're never going to know.
Yep. And don't go to extremes. It doesn't need to be all or nothing. It's our brains that make us feel that it's either one way or the other way, where in truth, majority of life is lived somewhere in the gray. It's somewhere in the messy middle. And the messy middle is difficult because there is not a right answer in the messy middle. There's just answers that are different. And people hate when things are different because it makes our life more complicated. And people want other people to go with them on their journey because they're afraid. And they feel that, hey, if there's other people here alongside me all doing the same thing and I fail, then at least they all failed with me and I don't look like a dummy. So that's the reason that we are the Fi Guys. We talk about the middle path a lot. We talk about the pros and the cons. We really want you to understand that there is good and there is bad in all of these things. And it depends on how you want to look at it and how you want to apply it to your life, to your personal finances.
And I think that's a really good point, what you just said, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing. In fact, it should rarely ever be all or nothing. It's so important that, like what you said in one of the shorts we recorded this week and in Monday's episode, right? The goal is to be financially flexible, right? And it's a great take, but I think we can go even further with it. But it's important to be flexible in all things, right? To stand here and say, I mean, we know this to be true. I mean, only a Sith deals in absolutes, right?
Ding.
Ding, ding. I hope more people get those references. I really do. I hope they're just like, what the hell's a Sith? How's that? What's that? Is that a tax thing? Yeah, it's not a tax thing. But no, it's important to be flexible and be able to maneuver. And I think it was Bruce Lee who had this quote. He's like, "Be like water." You know where I was going with that. Be like water, right? Formless, shapeless. You put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. You put it in a jar, it becomes the jar, essentially, right? And that's really what you have to be in this world these days. And that's great. That's a great place to be in. Always be flexible and don't shut yourself off to the possibility that you can learn something new, that maybe a Roth IRA is for me. Maybe a traditional is for me. Maybe this is for me, right? Maybe it's not for me, right? But if you don't know these things, then you can't really make an educated decision. And you're just leaving it up to chance. And a leader like you would never leave it up to chance, right? Right. Any final thoughts from Monday's episode, Chris?
No, I say if you haven't heard it, go back and listen to it. There was a lot of important things. And then, once you do, listen to that win of the week, or not the win of the week, the action step, and please do it. But with that, I say we move on to viewer mailbag.
Let's do it. So for today's episode of the viewer mailbag, this is a segment where someone in the community writes to us and we like to share their letter to the community. Obviously, that's the point of viewer mailbag. Right? We're not just doxing people out here, but sometimes they ask for advice. Sometimes they just want to share their story. And today they're going to be sharing one of their stories. So let's get right into it. This is today's episode of the viewer mailbag. Howdy, Fi Guys. I just had one of those moments yesterday that stopped me in my tracks. My 401k officially crossed $500,000. How about that? $500,000. Beautiful. I'm 41 years old, and honestly, I don't really talk about money with anyone in my day-to-day life. Good. He's living. That's nice. My friends aren't really into it. My coworkers don't care. And my wife, well, let's just say she'd rather talk about literally anything else, anything rather than my retirement accounts. Understandable. Just going to hit a quick pause here. We do recommend having money dates, right, Chris, with your spouse to be on the same page financially. Understandable if you don't want to talk every day about you really shouldn't be talking probably every day about the retirement accounts. It's kind of boring. More to life out there. So he's doing good. Just small tweaks, but he's doing great.
Yes.
Back to the story. So here I am writing to you guys, Fi Guys, because I wanted to share a milestone with someone who might actually get why it feels so huge. To give you some context, back in September of 2023, my balance was sitting at around $286,000. Since then, I've been maxing out my contributions, all in the VTSAX equivalent. And maybe you can give us some context on that, Chris.
VTSAX is Vanguard's total stock market index. It's a mutual fund, but basically what it is it's the S&P 500. It is basically the biggest companies. It's everything. Okay. If you want another one, there's another one called VTI, which is the ETF version of that. Vanguard's a great account. Yeah, it's good. I like that.
Wonderful. And last week, we talked a little bit about the difference between the mutual funds and the ETFs. If you don't know what that is, highly recommend going out and checking that out. Watching it climb from there to 500K feels like a blink of an eye. It feels surreal. But it wasn't always like this. My journey started in 2006, just doing the bare minimum, contributing up to the company's match. By the time the 2008 recession hit, I had maybe 10 or 12,000 saved. It was brutal watching those balances shrink. By 2011, after crawling my way back, I was hovering at around 45,000. Then life threw me a curveball. I became unemployed and I decided to go back to school from 2011 to 2014, which meant I missed out on some of those monster bull years. And I feel like I'm pausing this a bunch, right? So there's bull and there's bear markets. Bull is when the market's going up, bears when the market's going down. So I finally landed a job again in late 2014, and I started contributing to the match once more. between 2017 and 2021, I got serious and I maxed out my contributions.
Cool.
2019, I remember staring at my account and being blown away that I'd finally cracked the $100,000 mark. Nice. Then life happened again. I had another kid in 2022. Congratulations. And I scaled back to the company match. Of course, hindsight says that was the best time to be maxing out, but hey, life comes first. Couldn't agree more.
Yes.
Couldn't agree more. By 2023, I was ready to dial it back up again and start maxing it out. And here we are, 2 years later and $500,000. I guess the real reason I'm sharing this is for all the younger listeners out there. Contribute as much as you can, as early as you can. You don't need to pick flashy investments or time the market. God knows that's true. Just stay in and stay consistent. Keep plowing money in, and the growth will eventually take your breath away. I'm living proof of that. Thanks for letting me share my milestone with you guys, because sometimes you just need to celebrate with someone who actually understands the power of hitting numbers, just like this. From match to stash, how my 401k grew that cash. How about that? Wonderful. Well, congratulations. That's amazing. That's amazing. It sounds like he's living life, you know, had a job, got employed, went back to school, maxed it out, got a kid. He's back in the game. I love it. How exciting.
Yeah. And that's what I want to talk about is like, you can see that from this person's letter, like this was a journey. 2006 is when he got started. And like now he's finally hit that limit. And people might say, oh, that's too long. Like, why would I want to do that? Well, what's the alternative? The alternative is that he's here today at the same place, but he's moved. And also the thing I like is as life changed, he adapted the plan. I think there's too many people that say like, okay, Chris, if I put 4% into my 401k, that means I have to do 4% forever. Or if you want me to say like, I'm going to do 10%, what happens if I get hit by a car? Like, then I still have to do 10%. It's like, no, you can change this at any time. Like, this is what life is about, is having the ability to, again, be flexible, to move and shift like water around when things in life changes. And this letter is a perfect example of that, of him being able to adapt. I had a kid, I had to do that. I lost a job. This happened, this happened, this happened. And I just stayed consistent over and over. And I'm going to get into a few things that I've kind of thought about this as you were writing it, but anything that you have, Dominic?
No, I think I'm just proud that he found something that worked. And when he needed to pivot, he pivoted. But he returned to what he knew worked. I think that's important. Once you strike gold, or once you strike oil, keep digging, right? Keep pumping that oil out. And I think he did an amazing job.
1000%. So to our listener, first off, I just want to say $500,000 in your 401k is just a huge milestone. And for me, when I see that, that's not just a number. And for you should look at it that way too. That's years of consistency, discipline, and weathering storms in the market. And you should actually and absolutely take the time to celebrate that. Not just with us by writing in this letter, but like go out with your spouse, like talk, do something cool. That's amazing that you've been able to do that. Because what really jumps out to me is the power of compounding. And that's what I hope our listeners take from this. Like our writer went from 28,000 some odd to 500,000 in about 2 years. And just like we talk about the snowball, that's the snowball effect in action. That's compound interest. That's more money picking up more money as it goes. And once you've been at this for a long time, that growth starts to accelerate almost to an autopilot, to where your investments are making more than you are by working. And I love that our writer kept it simple. He didn't chase them exotic strategies like options trading or trying to time the market. They just stuck to what I would consider a very boring broad market index, VTSAX. And they just kept contributing. And the proof of that simple action over time beat all the complexity. Because the truth, it's not the knowledge that's typically the issue. It's the consistency. And then as life threw curveballs at our writer, they went through unemployment, they had to go back to school, they had a kid. So there were seasons that they couldn't max out their contributions. And all they did is they pivoted. And that's such an important reminder that you have the ability to pause a contribution. Just because you have to stop for a little while, it doesn't mean it's the end of the journey. And to our younger listeners who are listening to this, I want you to take note that those early contributions, they often matter the most. Because even those small amounts in those early years have more time to snowball. And that snowball that starts out very, very small at the beginning, over 10, 20, 30, 40 years. If you're getting started at 20 and you want to retire at 65, that's 45 years to allow that money to double and double and double. Just think of the rule of 72. If that's difficult, the rule of 105, that's how long it takes for it to triple. It's the exact same thing. The biggest thing to me is that this listener, they remain flexible. They adjusted their contributions around their family's needs because they realized that life and the family comes first. And then they cranked it up when life got back to what is normal or what is normal now. And that's smart financial planning. Letting your money serve your life and not the other way around. That's why I don't really like traditional financial planning where you walk into a place, they give you a pamphlet, they talk to you for 2 meetings at like an hour each, and they give you a pamphlet and said, here's your definitive thing, do this for the rest of your life. That sounds well and good till you walk outside and you get sick, till you lose your job. Something is always going to happen, and that's where you need to remain flexible. Because in money, there's 2 things in life that doesn't matter if you want to interact with it, it will interact with you, and that's your health and your wealth. You can't farm those things out. Doesn't matter how much you pay your personal trainer, they can't work out for you. Doesn't matter how much you pay your financial advisor, they're not going to go spending the money for you. You need to be responsible for those things. I want to talk about one thing though, and that's that I think that we do need to normalize the conversation around money. I think by this person saying like his friends don't want to talk about money, his wife doesn't even want to talk about money, that's the reason that this person feels like he has to reach out to us. And I'm glad that they did. But you need to create a place by being maybe the first person to be willing to give that information, to make that safe place so people can share their wins. And more importantly than their wins, what they're doing, so that you can see maybe there's another option for me to get there. But until we normalize the conversation around money, it's always going to remain shrouded in mystery. It's going to remain this scary thing in the corner. But by being able to bring it out into the open, just to talk about it and say, hey, this is what's going on in my life. What's going on with yours? Be open about these things. Too many people have so much shame and guilt and remorse when it comes to their money. And we shouldn't, because no one ever taught us this stuff. We're just figuring it all out. So finally, at 41 years old, you've saved $500,000 and you're in an incredible position. If you keep doing what you're doing, that $500,000 is going to jump to $1 million. That $1 million is going to jump to $2 million, $2 million to $4 million, and then it's going to keep on happening faster and faster than you can imagine. You just need to remain consistent and keep on doing exactly what you're doing because you have a plan. Is it perfect? Most likely not. It's not perfect because it had to change, and it's going to continue to change. But you're going to find the perfect plan in hindsight. And it sounds like you're in a pretty good place to me right now. So congrats to our listener.
Big congrats from Arizona and from California. Heck yeah. Well, we're going to be moving on to our win of the week. Chris, would you like to go first on the win of the week?
Yeah, for sure. So my win of the week is I often talk about every few years, every 6 months typically or a year, it's good to call your insurance provider, your internet provider, your cell phone provider, call the utilities of what people think. These are fixed costs. I can't do anything about it. It just is what it is. And talk and negotiate and just be a reasonable human being. If you don't know how to negotiate, I would definitely read Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. But over this weekend on Saturday, I took some time to sit down. My wife was at work and I called my internet provider and I used a lot of the tools that he used inside the book, mostly kindness and just negotiation. And while they weren't able to save me money, they did upgrade my data plan to 100%. So rather than 500 gigs, I now get, or 500 gigs, I get a
terabyte.
Yep. A terabyte a minute. So they doubled what I have for the same price. That's locked in for the next 2 years. And then for my cell phone coverage for me and my wife, I called them and I asked them what could they do. And unfortunately, there wasn't a lot, but they did give me a $10 discount for the next 7 months. And after that time, then we can decide what we want to do there. So just those 2 little things, like that saved me $70. And that was a 20-minute phone call. Like, how much is your time worth? Because most people are going to work and they're not making $20 an hour Or some people do make $20 an hour, but I made $20 in 15 minutes by making a phone call. I now have double the download speed for my internet and everything's actually running a lot better now after
you
doing
look crispy.
that.
You look good.
Nice and crispy.
Yep.
Just from making a phone call. And yeah, I mean, altogether doing all that stuff took 45 minutes to do both things. But 45 minutes for that amount of savings is huge. Like, what would you do? How much money, what are you willing to do for 45 minutes to make $70? And then I don't even know how much doubling your internet speed would cost you. Let's say $100. What are you willing to do for $100 in an hour? Are you willing to make a phone call?
How about that? That's pretty damn good. That's really good. Doubling your internet speed. That's insane. I honestly might have to call my internet company today and have a little one-on-one negotiation with them, Chris Voss style. That's awesome though. That's a big win. And you know what I love about that too is, like all things lead back to finance, right? It's the idea of compounding. You make one call on a Saturday afternoon and it's paying dividends for years to come. And I love that. That is a great win of the week. For my win of the week, as I mentioned a couple weeks back, I started learning a new software that's helping me challenge my mind and keep it young and sharp. Also something that I can use over on my streams, over in videos, and maybe even possibly over here. But that would be Unreal Engine. It's a 3D software that a lot of production companies use to animate things, create virtual scenes, notifications, a bunch of whole different crazy stuff. And I've noticed that I've spent more and more time working on my craft and getting better and better at it. And I've started creating my first scene, and it's really cool. I showed a friend of mine who uses a sister software that does similar stuff. And he's like, wow, that's really awesome. So it was really cool to get validated from someone who's in the space, who knows a little bit more about it. But yeah, that's my win of the week. I've got this amazing, really cool scene that I'm working on. Hopefully I'll be revealing it in the coming months, along with a myriad of more scenes for my streams and whatnot and videos. So I'm excited, but yeah, that's my win of the week. And I'm right at the end of getting over my little bit of a cold. So I'm excited to get over this cold.
That's awesome, man. Well, to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us here on Fi Friday Feedback. I hope you come back for next Monday's episode 10 of the Fi Crash Course Remastered. We're almost to the end of it. We only have 12 episodes in this series, but I hope by the end of it, you know everything that you need to. And if this is the first episode that you're joining us of the Fi Crash Course, go back and listen to episode 100. That is the Welcome to the Fi Guys, where we kind of tell you exactly what financial independence is about, what it is that we do here. And then if you're ready, go to episode 110. That's where we start the Fi Crash Course. And that's a great place to get started, to get you on the journey to financial independence with a solid plan in place that will help to work with you as you continue to go through life and things happen. But I'm Chris, he's Dominic, and please do this one favor to me. Please share the Fi Guys with one friend, because it's so much more fun to go on a journey of financial independence with somebody than to go alone. And more importantly, when you get to the end of that journey, which it probably never ends, but when you get it closer to the end and you want to hang out with someone to hang out with, someone to talk to on a Friday afternoon where you get to sit here and record a podcast, you only get to do that by bringing people along, not by waiting until the end where you say, hey man, I want to hang out. And they're like, I didn't know about any of this stuff. Why didn't you tell me? You were doing all this stuff in secret and I was here drowning the entire time. Don't be that person. So I'm Chris, he's Dominic, we're the Fi Guys. Later.
Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.